Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
And by airs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at airs.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
This is Ed Cohen, and you're on Global TV Talk Show. This is a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net that's been in operation since '03. A friend of mine who worked as a developer at Intel helped me found this website and organization. Since then, Google Analytics has measured 1.2 million audience page views from over 100 countries. Global TV Talk Show started as a result of the pandemic crashing my live conference business in March of 2020. And since then, Global TV Talk Show has produced almost 200 broadcasts. And Google Analytics says we've had about 110,000 audience page views. So welcome, Ken Somers, and Somers HR Solutions. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, Ed. Happy to be here with you today.
Thank you very much. We're going to be talking about companies opening up, going from crisis to recovery and hopefully better. So in the background, we have Denise O'Malley, who's a benefits specialist. Hello, Denise. Welcome. And Richard Pummel, thank you very much for your kind interest today. So, Ken, you have just come off a long assignment in Poland, right?
Yes. Just prior to, we were in Poland at the very beginning of 2020, and although it was a wonderful experience and enjoyed it and wanted to stay longer, we were fortunate to be able to get out of Poland and back to America literally the 24 hours before they closed the borders.
Good for you. Well, welcome back.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to be back. Although I must tell you, Poland was a wonderful experience. I was there for several months as the acting country manager while the new hire was transitioning from his old job. So
great. And do you want to mention that company?
I can. It's not a big secret. It's AXA XL. That was my last major gig with AXA XL before I chose to retire last summer.
So reopening is big time news. Today is June 28th, year 2021, and here in California and many other places, it's screeching back to normal. Very, very, very busy. The freeways are clogged, and lots of tourists have been in town. So it hasn't been that way for a long time. So what's it mean for individuals, for managers and companies? I mean, there's a whole new world because COVID's impacted everybody and everything, right?
I think so. So, and I should preface this by saying that, the views you hear are exclusively my own. I'm not representing anybody or anything. But I think I'm a reasonably well-informed observer of behaviors and corporate responses to behaviors. And I do think you're right, Ed. I think that largely the effects of reopening will be felt in three broad buckets: individual employees, people managers, and then companies at a broader level. Um, and each of those categories are going to have different experiences. I think for a lot of employees, and you all have probably seen the numerous surveys that have gone out. Some say that as many as 40 or 50% of the employee population will not go back to their employer if they can't get some kind of accommodation or flexibility that we've all become accustomed to as a result of COVID. It is indeed, I would argue, one of the biggest lasting legacies of the COVID experience.
So the challenge is for managers to relate better, to understand. So are managers required, according to you, are they now required to take people courses and reboot their brain?
I don't think they are required to get people to take people courses and reboot their brains. I do think that companies have an obligation to give managers, particularly frontline managers, the folks who supervise staff on a day-to-day basis. Those folks need tools that they may not have today. And they're going to fall largely in the category of emotion, what we would call emotional intelligence, in terms of being sensitive to the whole person of an employee, because their worlds have changed. They're going to need tools on how to collaborate remotely. They're going to need tools on how to manage performance remotely. I take note that Denise is in the benefits space. I would imagine that and I spent a lot of years in benefits, so I have a great fondness for your expertise, Denise. But I think that our colleagues in the benefits world are probably doing a deep re-examination of what's the portfolio we have to offer in this new world. And Richard, who is an HRIS person of many years, I'm sure that the technology that companies are using to engage with employees is going to change dramatically as a consequence of COVID. So I think it'll be felt in many different ways across all organizations. But I do want to reiterate, I think companies, particularly the larger, more sophisticated employers, have a profound obligation to think about what do their people managers need in order to successfully engage their people, and what do the people need in order to build on the positives that have come out of COVID. I mean, we're all familiar with the negatives, but there are a lot of positive developments too, including the fact that we can work successfully in a remote environment.
Well, some people more than others. But before we get to that, is it BS that there's going to be a mass resignation, that people are going to quit their bosses, not the company, but quit their bosses?
I think it's probably a little overblown. And we all know that, and I say this with the greatest respect for the press, but I think that the press tends to go for the dramatic to get us to read whatever it is the headline was.
The sell advertising, yeah.
Exactly, that too. But I do think that there will be a non-trivial impact of people saying, I'm not going back unless we can change the way we operate.
Clean and safe?
Yeah, clean and safe, respectful of my needs. The fact that my world has changed as a consequence of COVID. I've become aware of things that maybe I didn't even have time to think about before, but now are part of my daily routine, like how's my kid doing on his math class? And I think the world has changed.
So dads or moms working from home, at first it was probably a culture shock for them, but they've gotten into it, maybe developed better relationships, hopefully, and gotten more into family things. And so it's time and place, right?
It's time and place, and it is across those two dimensions. I think of it in terms of what work has to be done synchronously at the same time as others, and what work can be done asynchronously.
Okay, what's that mean?
So an example would be, maybe I have a project that's due, and I really don't need to collaborate with others on it, or I may have all the information I already need in order to proceed with the project, but my kid needs help with his math homework, so I'm going to do that. And when he or she is either playing or after they've gone to bed, I'll turn on my computer and I'll work on that stuff in an environment that is not necessarily connected to when others are working.
So let's just say that that person is not a VP, but a senior person, and they've been around. They have been making enough money to buy a house and married, got a couple of kids, and they have that situation, right?
Yep.
But then you have a whole bunch of other people who are, say, 30 years old, even 28, 30, 35. Maybe they're just married, but probably single, and they don't have the work experience. They require a different kind of management and maybe should be in the office.
Well, absolutely. And not to paint with too broad a brush, but I think of those folks in the bucket of young urban professionals. And the reality is those are the people who most desperately need to work synchronously, preferably for many of them, at least some of the time in the office, so that they can pick up all the subtle, unwritten cultural rules of how an organization operates, but not necessarily 100% of the time in the office. They too need and want flexibility, but what they need more than the well-established employee is that cultural connection. What are the behavioral norms of the organization in order to be effective? How do I get stuff done? And so much of corporate America, whether it's a big company or even a small company, that how do I get stuff done is influenced by your relationship with your boss and other coworkers. And as much as hybrid is great, that personal interaction is important at an early stage of your career. So you learn all those subtle cues.
So a lot has to do, from a manager's point of view, a lot has to do with the psychology of, first of all, understanding where that employee is mentally, emotionally, and professionally. So that's called what? Work behavior or workplace behavior?
Workplace behavior. I mean, I don't know that there's a particular term for it, but as I think back on my own career, and I've worked for several different companies, both large and small, every company is different. And the behavioral norms in every company are different. My first job out of college was with IBM. And at the time, the IBM culture was very top down. I can't say what it is today, but you learn very quickly in a top down environment that this is how it operates. And I don't know that it would be so easy to pick that up in a 100% remote world as it was being able to walk down the hall, talk to my boss, and have him guide me on the do's and don'ts of succeeding in that kind of environment.
So let's talk about power relationships, not from a threat point of view, but
Nope.
That comes from comfort and experience.
Yep. Yeah, I think of power in the office, especially these days, less about control and more about influence. And if you have influence through an established relationship, take the individual you were referring to earlier. He or she, they've been around long enough to establish themselves. They have their home in the suburbs with a couple of kids. They are probably, because they have established themselves in the company, much more able to exert influence than the brand new hire is, who came on board during COVID, may or may not have ever even been in the office, and now has to succeed and build a way to thrive in their company. They probably have less influential power than the established employee, which is another reason why they need, in my view, some human interaction in the office environment.
Let's talk about benefits, okay? And post-COVID, the recovery phase benefits, we have to assume that everybody who comes to the office is going to be vaccinated unless they have a darn good excuse.
Can we pause on that for a minute?
Yeah.
Because I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding about requiring vaccinations. And our colleagues on the call may have an opinion that they want to share, but
I welcome it.
The EEOC has been pretty clear that employers can require vaccinations, but you have to be able to accommodate sincerely held religious concerns and any disability kinds of issues have to be recognized. And I would wager that most, if not, well, I would wager that many, many employers have not thought through even whether they're going to require vaccinations and how to manage exceptions. So there's a lot of work for companies to do before we can get to what I think of as the next normal.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a timely announcement.
Hi, I'm Sergey Gorbatov.
I'm Angela Lane.
Together we're researchers, writers and practitioners in the field of human resources.
And we've also been multi-country, multi-assignment career expats.
We owe our professional development and growth to a very large extent to the international assignment opportunities that we have had.
But in a world where distributed work may become the norm, we also want to understand what will happen to the nature, duration, and purpose of international assignments.
Together with our colleague, Julian Dalzell from the University of South Carolina, we're undertaking a study on the future of expatriation.
And we'd value your contribution. You can participate in this important study by completing a simple 10-minute questionnaire.
Access the questionnaire by typing in your browser tinyurl.com/expert study. That's tinyurl.com/expert study. You can also find the link here on Ed's website next to this video.
Thank you for joining us in this study. In return for your contribution, we'll provide you with a copy of our research.
And of course, you'll be invited to an exclusive webinar hosted by Ed, where we will share our findings right here on Global Business News.
And so please go to tinyurl.com/expat study. Take the survey so that we can better understand the future of expatriation.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
So what about the people, let's just say the younger people who we were talking about, earlier, a few minutes ago. They're being forced to be vaccinated, even though many of them never got sick or had no negative experience. And now the state of California has gotten into, just recently, about a week ago, offering a QR code of that card, the vaccination card. And so it's all on the phone now, once you get that. So Denise, if you don't mind jumping in here, you're an expert in employee benefits. What do you think about this?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Yes.
Here's my philosophy on it. It's just from my personal experience. So I have a 24-year-old son who was absolutely adamant about getting vaccinated. He's in a job, heavy public content connections. I've been trying to get him to get vaccinated for a long time. He didn't. And 10 days ago, he got really violently ill, very, very fast. Rushed to the hospital, 105-degree temperature.
Oh my.
The first thought that went through his mind was, oh, holy, this has to be COVID. And that's what everybody thought it was too. And it turned out to not be, but he was really, really sick. And he got vaccinated 2 days ago because he didn't think it could happen to him. But when his first thought was, he immediately decided he never wanted to have that fear if it really was COVID again. So I think with a lot of people in the younger generation, they just feel like they're invincible and that they don't have to have it. I am an advocate for getting vaccinated simply because it is opening up our country again. And I have a lot of people in my world, particularly in my network of health and wellness professionals who are anti-vaxxers, and I honor their position. I don't agree with their position. But
so
I would require it in the office.
What was your son's illness?
They don't know. Their catch-all, it must be one of these wicked little viruses that are going around. It was a catch-all bucket. Throw it in there. Okay. He is fine. Although that 105-degree temperature, people say it doesn't mess with your brain. Yeah, it really did. He's had a hard time.
Well, we're going to think quick thoughts for his full recovery.
Yeah, quick. And thank you for sharing that story. That's a real story.
It is.
So Richard, I welcome you to jump in here if you want. So workplace behavior. Let's talk about workplace behavior. Will people want to go in the elevator to go up to the office, or will they walk on the stairs? What?
I think that what we're going to see going forward is similar to what I've experienced going to the supermarket and was forced to go to the mall yesterday. You look around and it's as though COVID never happened. People aren't wearing masks. They're not social distancing anymore. And where there's no enforcement, there's not going to be any follow through on the individual. So I think that if workplaces open up and they are lax around enforcement and they don't require non-vaccinated employees to wear a mask, it's going to be back to the way that we were before. And it will be a rude reminder for us if things pick up again in the fall with some of these variants, that we still need to be very cautious in the workplace as well as everywhere else.
Well, I've had the 2 Moderna shots, and thankfully no reaction at all. And I feel liberated and like it's a miracle that it happened that way. But I can't wait to get the booster they're going to start shooting in November or December here in California. I've already raised my hand. Take me. But that's just me.
I do think Richard is right that that people are largely just assuming everything's okay now. And one of the things that I would take the opportunity to remind employers who may view this at some point is it's generally accepted that employers have an affirmative obligation to provide a safe and healthy workplace. And to the extent that they scoff or do not enforce some reasonable rules about the workplace, I think that they're exposing themselves.
Lawsuit. And the culture, the brand, they're impacting the brand. Now, if somebody gets to the office and they were healthy, and then a week from now, 2 weeks from now, they're out sick for some reason, and everyone's wondering, is it COVID, or am I going to be infected now? And boy, I sat right next to that person.
Well, the other thing that's happening, you know, as a consequence of what Richard observed, is you know, the colds and flu are back. You know, we went through a winter with
That's right.
almost no flu.
Nothing.
Because everyone was masked up.
Right.
So, you know, there are some. I had the great pleasure and opportunity to live in Japan for 8 years.
And they wore masks all the time there, right?
When people are sick, they just it's standard operating procedure. You don a mask, and everyone gets it. And I hope that we get to a point where we as a society develop the respect for others, that if I'm sick and I have to go out, I'm going to wear a mask out of respect for others.
And that is, it's a signal. It's like wearing a flag or something. You know, everyone's going to know that you're sick, so they're going to stay away, maybe.
Well, you know, people will keep their distance to some extent, but at least and I'm not Japanese, and I don't claim to understand all the subtleties of Japanese culture, but people respect it when you wear a mask because they know that you're trying to be courteous to them. And I'd love to see us move in that direction as a society.
So let's go back to talk about, in summary, and we still have a few minutes here, but individuals, managers, and companies, 3 different, variants, just to use that word again. But how does it all come together now? Does it come from the top down or people up?
I hope it comes top down. One of the things that I worry about in that regard is that if the executives that really, you know, the senior leadership team of any business, regardless of size, if they're working in the office full time, that sends a very strong signal to the employee population. So I hope that there's some role modeling of the behaviors that we want to encourage going forward, so that senior leadership also works remotely from time to time, which basically says to the population, it's okay. So I'd love to see it top down. I think senior leadership generally has a unique opportunity in this environment as we emerge from COVID to demonstrate the kinds of behaviors that we want to model going forward. But having said that, there are plenty of examples out there, and maybe Apple is the most recent one, where it'll come from the bottom up. I mean, Apple thought that they were doing a good thing by saying, we want you in the office 3 days a week. You can work remotely the other 2. And the employee said, wait a minute, why do I have to be there even 2 days a week? And Apple's now reconsidering. So it could go either way, but I think there's an opportunity for leadership to demonstrate, you know, leadership, for lack of a better term, in terms of setting the tone and helping people understand what's to be expected going forward.
And Wall Street Journal has published, I think you know this already, Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. I mean, those are pinnacles of power in that world. And they said, you better be in the office if you want to get paid.
Yep.
Period.
Yep. And I am a Morgan Stanley alum also, and I don't know how I'd feel if I was still there.
Interesting, isn't it? So let's talk, I know we touched on this already, but in your recent paper, which I'm using as a basis for this talk today, Work Behavior, Relevant to Achievement, Affiliation, and Power. Relationships, right?
Yes.
So please take it from there.
Sure. So again, this really isn't rocket science. we know that success in a workplace is influenced heavily by how you behave, what you want out of a relationship and what the company wants out of a relationship, those behavioral norms. And I take it back to, someone who perhaps is relatively new to an organization, got hired during COVID, may or may not have ever been in the office. You're not going to learn those things 100% remote. I believe hybrid will be the dominant strain going forward.
I agree with
To
you.
borrow a phrase.
Yeah.
And what leadership has to do is help people at all levels of experience, all levels of power in an organization, understand what are we going to do together collectively to make our business successful in the future. Some people, a memo or a video conference will be enough because they'll have the underpinnings of how an organization gets stuff done. But for newer people, they need more. And although I would certainly encourage newer people to take the initiative and ask if they're not getting it, leadership, I believe, has a responsibility to set the tone, explain what's going on, why we're doing what we're doing, and why it's important.
So would you, this is off the wall now, but would you advocate that a CEO organize a town hall kind of a thing for the company-wide employees where maybe the CEO's there to give it power, but the HR person is really the people person. But they need to not be political about this, but just to give the message and talk and welcome people's questions very publicly within that environment.
Yeah, and in fact, I would say that that's table stakes, Ed. What companies need to do is decide what do we want to look like? How do we want to operate in a post-COVID world? Then they need to build a strategy for implementing that. And included in that strategy is, what's the communications plan? How are we going to breathe life into that strategy? So the CEO having a town hall and saying, this is how it's going to be, and taking some questions, it's great. That's the tip of the iceberg. There's a bucket more work that needs to be done in order to embed those decisions in the culture.
So in your white paper, you talk about a holistic approach. And I'm just going to enunciate these, and I'm going to be quiet and let you finish up here. Structures, processes, people, rewards. Take us down that.
Right. So, and in the amount of time we have left, all I can do is touch the tip of this. But I would argue that COVID, for many companies, will require us to revisit all four of those categories. What do we want our culture to be? Are our business processes still appropriate, given that we're moving to a hybrid world? Do business processes have to change? Do I still need to do X, Y, or Z? There are many companies that are already looking at their reward structures. For an example is, there are many companies actually have what we used to call geographic differences. You might have the same job, but if you're living in Peoria, my compensation market demands are different than if you're in San Francisco. So I might have a geographic differential based on where you're living. How are those going to change in a post-COVID world where, if we are moving towards a primarily hybrid model, I could do my job from Zaire, never mind Peoria. So there's a lot that needs to be re-inspected there. Bottom line is, as companies think about how they want to reopen, not whether they'll reopen, it's clear everyone's going to reopen, but how do we reopen in a safe, effective way that retains the talent I need to be successful? And that means looking at holistically, how do I run my business and what needs to change in order to continue to be successful?
Thank you, Ken. So Denise, I have to ask you, to explain what your logo there says in the my upper right. You define wellness. So what does this mean?
Well, that's the name of my company. In the area of employee benefits, we are an employee benefit program for healthy living products and services. So as opposed to sickness care. So we're encompassing all the things that you guys are talking about here. And it includes the conversations at the workplace and the communications, as well as mental health and physical and fitness and everything else that you would go into wellness.
Thank you very much. And Richard, would you like to add something here?
Sure, no, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I think that what it comes down to, and one of the biggest opportunities for success, is that top-down approach that was mentioned earlier. And this is now a time when leadership has to be really introspective and say, do we have the skills going forward to manage and lead in this new world? Because if you're trying to lead an organization today the same way that you did 24 months ago, your results are going to be significantly different. And is your leadership team equipped with the tools and the people skills and the empathy to understand what people are coming back from? And people talk about having PTSD returning from a year away from office, right? But it's a real thing, and everybody's experience has been different, and that's something that leaders are really going to have to be aware of to help really reform the culture of their organization.
Thank you, Richard, for participating impromptu like this. I really appreciate it. Ken, what's your big challenge coming up this week?
This week, pardon me, I actually have a couple of deliverables that are due for clients that are not necessarily related to the next normal. But as I was preparing for this discussion, Ed, I came up with quite literally 6 more topics for a blog that I want to start working on. So,
all right. Well, I look forward to helping you publish that. And I welcome you back on Global TV Talk Show. Thank you, Ken Summers.
Thank
HR
you,
Solutions. Oh, I have one more question.
Yeah.
You've been focusing in our prior conversations, not today. So it's time now to ask you this as we sum up. Business partner, HR business partner. This is becoming very important now, isn't it?
I think so. I've been very fortunate in my career. In a 40+ year career as primarily in human resources, I got to do almost every functional role in HR. And when I had the opportunity to move into the business partner role, one of the things I learned really quickly is that the opportunity for impact and influence is so profound in that role. And so many of our HR business partners are just caught up in the administrivia, the generalist kinds of behaviors. And so I have a passion around helping people who are HR business partners move away from being, and I say this as courteously as I can, move away from being a sophisticated clerkatroid to really having impact and influence on the organizations that you support. And I just think that there's just such huge opportunity to make the business partner role more impactful than it typically is. There are many exceptions, clearly.
So that means technology.
It means technology, but a lot of it is, if I boil it down, and I'm going to oversimplify by boiling it down, situationally appropriate courage.
SAC. Huh?
And I noticed our colleagues nodding their heads, so I think I might have said something reasonably accurate. But
now, you mean courage back to the HR VP or to the C-suite?
The C-suite and your customers, your internal customers. I can think of many examples. Maybe I'll share some in a future discussion. I've lost a job because I was situationally appropriate, courageous. But you know what? I can look in the mirror. And that, to me, that's really important.
Well said. Ken Summers, thanks very much for being my special guest and being a leader as we go from crisis to recovery. Ken Summers, thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Denise. It's great.
Thank you.
All right, signing off from San Diego and from the Boston area, from, where are you, in Denver?
Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, right. And Richard, you said you're in Hartford.
Correct.
Yeah, that's cool. I haven't been in downtown
I'm in
Hartford in a long time. I'm from Boston originally, so I had some relations there. Yeah. In fact, west of there in Avon, beautiful countryside up there. Yeah, it's great. All right, thank you, and bye-bye.
Bye all.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.